Welcome to another Essex Boys Case Rant, and I hope that you are well as you are listening to this. This has been recorded at the beginning of March, and as you may have noticed, the last few weeks, quite a bit of content to do with the Essex Boys case has been removed from YouTube. This is due to copyright issues with several photos and footage that was used without permission. Around 6 or 7 channels were hit with copyright issues. There may be more. This is just the ones that I know of. Crime Scene to Courtroom, Essex Boys JT, Theo Cloud, and a few others were hit with strikes and copyright issues. Essex Boys JT's channel is no longer around after it was terminated for the free strikes and out side of things on YouTube, and also the Theo Cloud's channel apparently has decided to be shut after also going through the same thing. Crime Scene to Courtroom is still around on YouTube at the moment. He removed the majority of his videos to edit. He's in the process at the moment of putting them back onto YouTube, and if you've noticed that some of his videos he's uploading at the moment have already been uploaded before, or you've already seen them, it's because he's literally had to edit them, and he's in the process of putting them all back into his channel at the moment. But new content will be coming from Crime Scene pretty soon. Now, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the channels is the people that use the content, the photos and the footage without permission. It's understandable that the person that has the rights to these photos and footage wasn't happy with their content being used. The puzzle to the whole situation is just why now. The person in question could have done this at any point. Why right now? It's a bit of a mystery. I guess there is their own reasons for this to have happened. It's just a shame that messages couldn't have been sent to the said channels, and the content asked to be removed, instead of going the way of going through YouTube and literally having the channels near enough destroyed in so many ways. Let's say 2 are no longer around, and this channel itself actually got hit with the copyright issue, and the original Rant was pulled, and I had to edit it, and it's now back up with the copyright content removed. As of this moment, I say it's the early part of March, and we're still waiting for the Nipper and John interview. It's now going to be John Worms and Nipper both doing separate interviews and doing an interview together. This will all be taking place on the same day, and that is why at the moment we're still waiting for this to take place, because they're trying to confirm a day that they can both make it for the interview. And so sooner the better on that. Whoever needs to take the day off to sort this out needs to do it, whether it's Nipper or John. If it's Nipper and he's working at the moment, and this is why, the reason that the interview has been delayed, do us a favour, Nipper, take the day off. Yeah, pull a sickie. We're all waiting. I'm sure with the numbers amongst the groups and the YouTube channels, there's around 100,000 people sitting. We're still waiting for your answers, that with the revelation that you left us with last time that you have an interview, which was the beginning of January. It just feels like a lifetime ago, which is literally 2 months back. What's your opinion on the Nipper interview? Where do you stand now with his story that he told? I have noticed that the drop-off for believing his story has changed a lot over the last few weeks. The percentage of who does believe him now has changed. And I don't know if it's just literally because of the space in between the interviews, which is strange because is it literally because people have had more time to think about it and go over it in their minds and have conversations on the Facebook groups and watch more of YouTube channels and go through the videos on YouTube, and maybe they've sifted it through a couple of crime scenes videos and thought, no, this is... I mean, I did drop... I was going to do a lengthy rant on the Nipper interview, and I recorded a small segment and just forgot about it, and stuck it on YouTube the other day. It's not exactly great listening. It's just my slight opinion on everything that's gone on recently, and just still waiting for Nipper. Just thought I'd throw it up in the limbo of waiting, but I will do one once the Q&A, once this next interview drops with John, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about, to go over, discuss, whether he gives more details of the fourth passenger, whether he gives more details of Damon Albarn, because that is the bit that just doesn't, make a lot of sense. The fact of he named someone that so many ways is not connected to the Range Rover murders at all. His name is not mentioned in any statements. There's been nothing at all with Damon Albarn. When the Ricky Percival and Dean Burchell situation happened, when the murder of Dean Burchell happened, and Damon Albarn and Ricky Percival were both being done for the shootings of the Tretons, I'm pretty sure Damon Albarn would have used that information that he had at that point to try to get him a better situation. Yes, he did end up in witness protection. He's in the same boat as Darren. Not literally, because that would be very strange. But they are both in witness protection. Well, I'm assuming Darren's still in witness protection. Wherever he is, whether it's down in Bristol, whether it's in Scotland, that is... I'm surprised there's not an Essex boys group called, Where is Darren Nichols? And it literally just is dedicated to people trying to hunt him. I did see him in Morrison's the other night. Well, I assumed it was him, but it wasn't. He told me it wasn't him. This guy. No, so can you imagine just walking? Excuse me, are you Darren Nichols? Who? Well, he wouldn't be that now, would he? He wouldn't be. You'd have to say, excuse me, are you the person that was previously? Are you the artist that was previously known as Darren Nichols? Gruggs. But yeah, you do often see someone of that frame, if that is him in the Pixel photo or the Sunday People or the People article from the Supergrass from 2009, 2010. The image that goes round a lot, should be on the screen right now, goes round a lot within the groups, whether that's him or not. But I mean, look at the size of him. He's a chunky guy. It's all that drink, apparently. Someone said in the comments on the Facebook group the other day. It's all the alcohol. It's made in that size. If we're meant to believe what we heard on the 21-part series that came out the other month, he was found down around the Bristol area, Swindon, around that sort of Weston-super-Mare area. And he'd had a fight in a pub. He had an affair, and he'd been arrested for dealing. And I mean, the article itself is really funny. I mean, if that article is true, and what's stated in that article is what Darren said about luxury cars and tropical island holidays or whatever it was, and the big I am, and he's selling a little bit of smoke on Instagram or something like that. He selling a couple of ounces a week and making 20 quid on the side, and the big drug dealer. But yeah, witness protection. Darren is apparently still there, and Damon Albarn is there as well. And I just don't see Damon knowing what went on that night for all these years, and just remaining in witness protection and never coming forward at all, and never, because Damon Albarn wasn't that fourth passenger. Whether Nipper's covering for, whether this interview will be more truthful, whether, he'll come make straight and say, okay, it wasn't entirely true about the fourth passenger, I was covering for someone. It'll be interesting to see the chemistry between John and Nipper, considering if John does believe the fact that Steve sat on that secret for all these years, whilst Jack, his brother, remained inside for murders that he didn't commit. And Mick is still there, and is currently 77, what he is this year. And he's he'll still be a Cat A prisoner till at least 2022, and then he could be considered for parole in 2023, and then he would have done 25 years. Jack's sentence was obviously reduced for good behaviour. So, what is your opinion on Nipper's reveal now? An article came out today with the Daily Mirror, and the title was "The last man called by one of the murdered Essex boys was never questioned by the police. Is the Essex boys killer still at large? An ex-detective claims police ignored a shooter-link clue in the infamous shotgun murders of Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe in 1995. The last man called by one of the three gangsters murdered in the 1995 Essex boys killing was never questioned by police as merged. Retired detective David McKelvey says the suspected villain was linked to the man who was previously named as the shooter but was never charged. Instead, Jack Worms and Michael Steele were jailed for life after being convicted of blasting. They could have just worded it a bit better, couldn't they? They could have just shot, blasting the drug dealers with a shotgun in the Range Rover 26 years ago. But Mr. McKelvey and his team of highly experienced former murder detectives now claim to have found evidence supporting the account of an East End crook who told the police he was the getaway driver for the real killer, Billy Jasper. Mr. McKelvey, who runs private investigation firm TMI, said, "We have done a thorough and detailed investigation which has led us to believe there may have been a miscarriage of justice." Yep. Compelling new evidence throws the case into doubt, and we are appealing for witnesses to come forward. The bodies of Pat Tate, 36, Tony Tucker, 38, and Craig Rolfe, 26, were found on a remote snow-covered track in Redden, Essex, on 7th 7th, 1995. According to the prosecution, they were shot dead the night before between 6:48 and 6:59. That's according to rat boy Darren Nichols. The final call made from Tate's mobile, apart from one to a girlfriend, was at 18:26 even, and lasted 17 seconds. It was never disclosed at the trial. Mr. McKelvey said the vital witness Tate rang is repeatedly named in the murder file as a person of interest. Days after the murder, an action was raised to interview him, but when his solicitor said he was refusing to talk, officers gave up, the papers reveal. Mr. McKelvey said, "How could you not talk to him? He was the last person to speak to Pat Tate on the phone before he was executed around half an hour before. We have requested a meeting with the Chief Constable of Essex on 6 occasions to ask him about the findings without success. As a result, we will be asking these questions in public." Mr. McKelvey believes the evidence supports the account of East End criminal Billy Jasper, who gave Essex police a detailed account of how he was the getaway driver for a named assassin. Detectives made no inquiries into his story, files show. Why is that? Why did the police never believe Billy Jasper's version of events? They laughed him out of court pretty much. And then there's this made up rumour that he winked to Mick and Jack. When I first heard that he winked to Mick and Jack, that's what threw doubt in my mind, because if anyone's going to tell you a story and then wink at you, I mean, are you really going to have any trust in that story? Especially if it's in court. But according to certain sources, that wink never took place. And it was just mentioned to more discredit Billy Jasper's version of what went on. If you haven't already heard it, get over to Crime Scene to Courtroom's channel and check out the Billy Jasper's video. It should now be back up on there at the time of this recording. It covers all what was said in court between Billy Jasper. Mr. McKelvey says that he's seen intelligence which links the alleged shooter, named by Jasper, with the man called by Tate before he was shot. He said, what we have established is the 1826 call was made to an individual who was connected to the man through an armed robbery in 1989. This was known to Essex police in 1995 and 1996, but they never formally interviewed these people about the murders. The convictions of Worms, now 58, and Steele, 56, rested on the testimony of a convicted fraudster, Darren Nichols. Mr. McKelvey, who arrested Nichols in connection with drug smuggling in 1996, had believed the pair were guilty, but he changed his mind after a year going over the files. He plans to present his findings to the Criminal Cases Review Commission and Essex Police. An Essex Police spokesman said there was an exhaustive investigation and the evidence has been examined by the Criminal Cases Review Commission and the Court of Appeal. The case is under review with the CCRC and it would be inappropriate to comment further. The youngest of the three, cocaine addict and gopher Craig Rolfe, 26, was found slumped behind the wheel. It was suspected of murdering a rival drug dealer by giving him a lethal injection just days before, which, funnily enough, was on Tony Tucker's birthday. That is, of course, the murder of Kevin Whitaker. Behind Rolfe in the Range Rover was the body of 18-stone Pat Tate, who was the gang's enforcer and had a long history of violence. The night before his death, the 36-year-old steroid abuser attacked a restaurant manager, Roger Royland, slamming his head into a glass plate counter following a row over pizza toppings. Apparently, Pat wanted set different cheese on each quarter, like a 4-cheese pizza, which they do nowadays, but they didn't at that time. Which is, if Roger would have been a bit more experimental with his cheese, he may not have had his head smashed onto the counter following the conversation with him and Pat, with the classic line from the Rise of the Foot Soldier movie. We're talking about cheese, yet. Beep. I'm not going to say that. Tate, who was released from prison a few weeks before, was an associate of M25 Range Rover. Start again. M25 road rage killer Kenneth Knoll, who he had met in prison. The leader of the group, Tony Tucker, 38, was the doorman who controlled the drugs trade in a number of Essex nightclubs and drove a black Porsche with the registration TT9. Pat Tate met Mick Steele, a known drug importer, and Jack Worms, a car mechanic and insurance fraudster, while in prison. The prisoners, who were all from Suffolk and Essex, kept in touch after their release. Tate, a bodybuilder, went on to become an enforcer for Tony Tucker, who was involved in the drugs trade in the Essex nightclubs during the explosion of the rave scene in the late 1980s. Informant Darren Nichols claimed Steele and Worms had become angry because of an earlier narcotics deal had gone wrong. He said that this was the motive for luring the victims down the country lane on the pretext of discussing a cocaine shipment. Worms, who was cleared from prison earlier this year, applied in 2019 to the Criminal Cases Review Commission to have his conviction overturned, and the case is still being considered. His application is thought to include details of a Scotland Yard bugging operation that recorded a gangster offering to take out the dealers who supplied Leah Betts 3 weeks before they were murdered. Tucker, Tate and Rolfe controlled the supply of ecstasy in the Basildon Club where the tablet was brought. Details of the bugging operation appear in a 2002 Scotland Yard draft intelligence report called Operation Tiberius. I probably didn't say that right. which claimed gangsters had infuriated the Met at will. The Mirror revealed in 2017 details of the gangsters' proposal to the retired detective then suspected of corruption. An extract in the report states, on 16th of November 1995, ex-officer named met crime lord named who offered the hand of the friendship by offering to take out the supplier of the drugs to Leah Betts, who died of an overdose. The Tibbles report also names Jasper and says he was shot in a non-fatal attack, though it does not say when. Billy Jasper was arrested for armed robbery a month after the murders on January 15, 1996. He claimed another criminal, Jesse Gale, who later died in a car crash, gave him £5,000 to drive an accomplice known as Mr. D to and from Rant, Essex. He says Mr. D was going to do a cocaine deal with the three men. Jasper testified at an Old Bailey trial that he had already agreed to the plan and later spotted Mr. D's 9mm Browning pistol and a sawn-off shotgun when he drove to the murder scene at Workhouse Lane, but Jasper did not fit with Essex Police's theories. The Essex Police log noted on January the 18th, 1996, that the account did not fit in with the current intelligence direction and evidence already available. 4 months later, Darren Nichols told police he was the real getaway driver. Mr. McKelvey said it was a blinkered investigation. Darren Nichols made his confession after police stopped him in a car that had cannabis worth £10,000 in his boot. Such was the significance of the testimony that whilst summing up in the Old Bailey trial, Mr. Justice Hidden told the jury, "I hardly need stress the importance of Nichols' evidence. So much hinges on what he said." At the time, neither judge nor jury knew that Nichols had agreed to a commercial agreement with a writer to publish Blogs 19, a book about the killings, which made Nichols several £1,000s. He remains in hiding after being given a new identity. So it seems from that article that was printed in the Mirror today that the TMI lot and McKelvey are going with the Billy Jasper's theory still. So where does that put the Steve Ellis confession about his father? Or is Mr. D, the one that's mentioned in the article, is he still Ellis? And Nipper is just creating the rest of the story. His dad may have only told him the finer details, if his dad did tell him anything at all, and it's not just second-hand information. But if his dad did admit to Steve that he did it, maybe the finer details were never spoken about. But it does seem strange that there is the connection between the person making the last phone calls to Pat, and he apparently is on his call records quite a bit on that last day. The connection between the person that last spoke to Pat and the person that Billy Jasper dropped off that evening, which would have been the 7th of December because it was gone midnight. But if that is the case, Billy Jasper is really telling the truth, and the person he dropped off is really the shooter that left with the one bag and came back with the two. The missing bag from the back of the Range Rover, which probably contained the coke. The questions remain: why were Pat, Tony and Craig weaponless? Unless the shooter, Mr. D, the one in question, removed the weapons, which could be the case. Pat's gun was found back at the bungalow, but Tony could have had a weapon, or Craig could have had one. There could have been one in the Range Rover. There could have been one in the back. There could have been one in the head bag with the suspected coke. But one of the other questions is where were they between the last sightings of the Range Rover and midnight when the suspected murders took place? That's 6 hours. That's a long time to be held at gunpoint. Where were they held at gunpoint? Down the lane? I mean, were they sitting down the lane that whole time? That's a long time to be sat down there. With the confidence of you're not going to get any dog walkers, none of the farmers driving down that lane at any point. Any people going down the alternative lane, walking down for the Wheatsheaf pub. The weather wasn't exactly great. But would that stop people from dog walking? And because by the account of the statements, there was still quite a few people out and about that evening. But where were they for 6 hours? That's just such a missing link of the phone records are key. The missing phone records that were never released by the Essex police are key to prove whether they were still alive. And the police know that. The police probably know that. The Essex police are probably sitting there knowing that Pat, Tony and Craig were not killed by 7 o'clock. Knowing that fact. And that brings me back again to that white transit van seen leaving the lane at 7:40. Now this is something I missed until recently when going through the statements again, but there was another mention of a white transit van. I've always assumed whoever was in that white transit van didn't have anything to do with the murders that took place that evening, and they were possibly either innocent, somebody maybe turning around in the lay-by, someone completely innocent to do with it that was just happened to be using that lane for a wee, or that person drove down that lane and found the bodies already dead. Or the person in that van drove down that lane and there was no one down there. The Range Rover wasn't even down there yet. Hadn't arrived. Or they were down there waiting. So many different possibilities. But until recently, I'd assumed this van, that this was the first sighting of it. But there is a statement from a few days before that says on Monday the 4th, 2 days before the killings, on the Wednesday, during the evening, the person states they saw a white transit van parked in the driveway of 49 Gordon Road, Pat's bungalow. He saw two people with the vehicle, one of which he recognised to be the main occupier of the bungalow, Pat. The second male was a big, heavy-set person. He was white, but because of the distance and the darkness, he couldn't get a better description. The Ford Transit van was of a new style, and he cannot give any further description or the vehicle registration. Between midnight and 12:30 on the Wednesday, this would have been the early hours of the Wednesday morning. 24 hours later, they were dead. This was literally 24 hours before a white transit van gets seen driving out the lane. Is this that same transit van? Between midnight and 12:30 hours on the Wednesday the 6th, he just watched a film or football and he decided to take the dog out for a walk. He left his home via the front door and walked with his dog into the junction of Gordon Road. The bungalow of 49 Gordon Road was just opposite the junction. As he walked out, he saw the Ford white transit van Again, the same style as the vehicle he saw on Monday. The vehicle was pulling away from outside number 49 Gordon Road, heading towards Timber Log Lane. He is positive this vehicle pulled away from that address. The same one he saw on Monday evening. So Pat is seen with the driver of the white transit van Monday night and again Tuesday night, the early hours of Wednesday morning. By the early hours of Thursday morning, they were all dead. By the early hours of Thursday morning, they were all dead. 24 hours later, so this white transit van, Pat Tate's, it's leaving Pat's Monday, it's leaving Pat's Tuesday, early hours of Wednesday, is seen leaving the lane on a Wednesday night. Who was the driver of that white van? And what connection did they have to the murders? The statement from the person that saw the white van leaving the lane on the Wednesday evening, it was 1740. They stated that the white van emerged from the lane and turned left towards Retterdon in front of him. And then when he pulled out, causing the witness to brake because it was icy and snowing, and he thought what an idiot he was. Again, we all know who rings to mind when the word idiot comes in, but again, that is just one of the myths of this case, that we are meant to believe that Darren Nichols is an idiot. But who was the one that was left laughing at the end of the whole case? Who was the one that had the book deal? Who was the one that had the BBC One documentary and managed to get courts to quash him being in it, so they got the actors to be in it? Who was the one that apparently was still dealing, having affairs, fights in pub, luxury holidays and great cars? Whether that's all true or not, Darren Nichols was the only one that came out of all of this smiling. Fat, but smiling. Well, we assume he's fat. Gone on a diet now. See, this is the thing. They say stress causes you to lose weight, but not in the case of Darren Nichols, because, I mean, clearly he can't be very stressed. Now, these statements have probably been read out before by crime scene decorum, and the connection is clearly there. Now, the reason I'm reading these out now, and the reason I noticed the connection, was because of something I saw in Colton Leach's book Muscle, about when he visited a spiritualist to try and contact Tony. What was said between Colton and the spiritualist was he needed to know their names, so he pleaded, thinking it would be a speedy revenge. The spiritualist looked into the distance, and then she said this: "I don't know, but I could see 3 men standing together, looking up into the sky, pointing at a small plane. They are shouting, 'You bastard, Mick, you bastard.' She could see the Range Rover. She could see a white van with men getting into it. And she could see a motorbike." Now, when this has been posted on the Facebook groups, this has just been laughed at, because obviously, you know, visiting a spiritualist, and then the next thing she said to him is, you know, "That's £10, please." And just jokes like that. But the point in what she said is she could have picked up any of that information from papers, depending on how long it took Colton to go and visit the spiritualist and Tony's murder. She could have picked out if this was in 98 or after the arrest of Mick Steele and Jack Williams, she could have picked the name Mick from the paper. She obviously knew about the Range Rover. The two parts that are interesting in this are the fact about the white van and the motorbike. Motorbikes have never been mentioned in this case. I mean, it's never been a theory, really, to think about that the person, that the shooter, could have been behind the Range Rover on a motorbike and literally just waited for Damon Albarn or Darren Nichols or Mick Steele or whoever this mysterious fourth passenger to wait for them to go for a wee, and it's just like, who shall I shoot first? So it's Craig there, pop, pop. No, Pat saw the gun and then he shooted and shot Pat. I mean, really. If there was 100% proof that window shot out and not in, then Nipper stories lies. Or that part of it is a lie. If he turned around and said, my dad told me he killed him, I don't know any more details, fine. Your dad told him he killed you. Your dad told you he killed him. Killed them. I don't know what his dad told him, but he told him something. Does Nipper know any more details than what we're going to get? Is he literally sitting at home reciting the answers we want? And this being put off is just an excuse. Again, because first of it was CCRC, now it's this, they're just trying to arrange a date. Shout out to Liquid Bullet Productions for your upcoming interviews and your interviews you've dropped over the last few weeks. If you're not following Liquid Bullet Productions, or you haven't seen any of their recent interviews, get over there and take a look. Some good stuff. Like I say, the upcoming Nipper and John Worms interview should be soon, hopefully within this month. Just so then we can either just say, yeah, he's involved, or go home, Nipper. Go back to making up stories, because that's literally what it would be. It would just be another made up story, just like in The Sun in 95, which he admitted he made up. And that's what a lot of people truly believe that is the case now. That it's just a made up story, that he's just sat there and thought, you know what, I'll make up a story. But why? If money is the answer, it's a very strange way of doing it. Going to the papers, trying to get a book deal, trying to get a movie deal. I mean, trying to get a movie deal for his book already written would have been a good idea. The Rise of the Foot Soldier movies have now come to an end until they're rebooted. He could have tried to speak to the producers and directors of them and see if they're interested in making a Last Man Standing movie. I do truly believe that Steve's story should be said. Who they would get to play Tony, Pat and Craig would be really weird, because, I mean, so many ways Craig Fairbrass was the perfect Pat Tate. No offence, Tamer Hassan, bonded by blood. Pat's not Turkish. No offence, I love Tamer Hassan, he's a brilliant actor, but The Business is one of the best films with Tamar, but he's just not Pat Tate. I never saw it. I love Bonded by Blood as a film, kind of. The way it differed from Rise, the way it had, I truly believe if you put Rise of the Foot Soldier and Bonded by Blood together into one movie, you'd have a good film. Nothing touches the original Rise of the Foot Soldier. The sequels have been questionable. I do love the third one. You do get that coming to the Facebook groups all the time. Is there an element of truth in these films? There's not much element of truth in the third and fourth one. There are parts of truth in the third movie, the Pat Tate story. He did go to prison. His partner did give birth. And he did throw someone over a balcony. They didn't die. They weren't Mad Dog. That classic scene with Mad Dog, or Dead Dog. And the families often get asked on the Facebook groups, was Pat really like that in real life? And the movies have overhyped the characters. Craig's character obviously isn't the clown. Several people that knew Craig have come forward saying he wasn't like that at all. But after the first Rise of the movie, they kept his character as the comedian like. Definitely a lot more like the Bonded by Blood version. Neil Maskell, who also played Darren Nichols in Rise of the Foot Soldier. Played the perfect Darren, from what we know. And also played the perfect Craig, from what we know. But Bonded by Blood, Terry Stone's hair just was normal, and poor Terry, no wig in Bonded by Blood gets grief for it, and just gets constant grief for his wigs in the Rise of the Foot Soldier movies. The first wig, the first Rise movie, obviously being the first, the better wig, the better movie out of all of them, and has definitely set a standard when it comes to making any sort of story on the firm, on Tony, Pat and Craig, and that story, which I still truly believe hasn't had its justice yet. 10-episode Netflix series, something long, covering everything. I do think that there needs to be a sort of outcome, which is not just a confession with half a story. Jack obviously out of prison now. I think maybe when Mick gets out, if he ever does, or if the investigation was to come up with something with more details, or the convictions were overturned, some sort of outcome where they can say this was the ending, because I'm guessing anyone that would ever make a TV show or a movie series based on the stories would want it to have an ending. Otherwise, it would leave it like an open story. But I think covering the trial, Mick, Jack, their stories have never really been told. Jack had such a small story in the Rise of the Foot Soldier movie, giving a dirty look to Pat Tate on his release from prison, and then just importing slightly, and then just there shooting them. But because Rise of the Foot Soldier covered Carlton Leach's story as well, it's kind of two movies into one. There was so much to cover, and then quite a bit was left out. I do definitely think there's stories to be told. The Essex Boys movie, the original one from year 2000, I recently watched that again. And once the murders, I just assumed that it ended with the murders, like Rise of the Foot Soldier. And when the murders took place and the movie kept going on, it just turned into this, the driver, spoilers by the way, if you haven't seen it, but the driver, the survivor of the murders, Billy Whiz, started sleeping with the partner of Jason Locke in the movie, and it just didn't make any sense at all compared to the real story. And then the other ones that have come out in between, Law of Survival, which took place after the murders, and Essex Boys Retribution, which also took place after the murders. There is another one, The Fall of the Essex Boys, and that does have an interesting twist at the end, with Mick and Jack not being the shooters, and Darren Nichols not being who he said he was. So if you haven't seen that, it stars Nick Devine, sorry if I just said your name wrong, and Tony Denham is Jack, and it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it. It's the people cast as Tony, Pat, and Craig are questionable. Craig has a ginger beard. Tony's about 4 foot, and Craig and Pat just nah. No offense to any of the actors involved, but in my mind, the three cast in the Rise of the Foot Soldier movies were probably the closest you're going to get to someone looking like the three. But what happens now with the movies is anyone's sort of guess, because Terry Stone is now done with the Tony Tucker character, and Craig Fairbrass has sent a tweet out recently stating that he's done with Pat Tate. They are all broaching 60, which is near enough double the age of the people they were playing. But it's a shame we're not going to get the Jack Worm story and the Mick Steele story, but their stories could come out if the whole story is to be told one day on TV, possibly on Netflix, but who knows. This has been another rant, me rambling on. Join me again soon. I should be back. Hopefully, on the next rant, it will be discussing where the original Range Rover is. Can't wait. And should have some sort of statement to read out from the guy who has the original Range Rover page at the moment, and is raffling off his Range Rover, whether it's the real one or not. Hopefully I'll have some sort of statement from him regarding the raffle, regarding the history of the Range Rover, and that's coming up on the next rant within the next couple of days. Take care and look after yourself. But before you go, a little quick follow-up to the message I sent to Darren on the previous rant. If you're listening, big man, put the McDonald's down and get in touch. But seriously, if you've anyone out there you suspect of being Darren Nichols, get in touch with your local police, or in touch with the admin of the Facebook groups, which there are several of. If you're not already a member, get over there and join up. Like I say, there are Essex Boys The Truth, Nothing But, Essex Boys Then and Now, and several other groups related to the case and the murders of Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe. See you next time.